Hi, Alan Stratton from Woodturn. A club asked me to do a demonstration for a cross-grain box. Now, I do a lot of different projects. I'm not making cross-grain boxes day in and day out. So I thought it was a good idea to do a practice run to make sure I was totally fresh on how to do it. So let's make this cross-grain box in practice preparation for my demo. It's white oak for the base, zebra wood on the top, gives a nice chance for zebra wood to show off, white oak to contribute but not to overpower it. So let's turn this box. A cross-grain box is an exercise in mounting. Most would start with a screw mount, but that requires drilling an accurate hole to get started. I would rather be turning. So since the wood has a flat side, I press it against my closed chuck jaws with live center pressure. This mount is secure. The only thing that can happen is the wood slipping on the jaw faces, and this is no different than using a stem center when it slips. All that is required is to crank a bit more on the tailstock ram. A quick touch with my bowl gouge is enough to remind me that this is cross-grain, not a spindle. I switch cut direction to come bottom up, much better and much easier to cut it. With the wood round, next is the only downside to cutting this way. I need a mortise with the center cleaned out. There are alternatives, but I am going to cut a sacrificial mortise. It is sacrificial because when I hollow the base, it will be completely cut out. I am using a narrow box scraper because it can cut the mortise while being parallel and next to my live center. An alternative is a bidan, depending on how it is ground. The only criteria for this mortise is that it is big enough for my chuck jaws. I reverse the wood and mount it with that mortise. Now I can get serious about my box. This is now the bottom side of the box. I do not have to keep the live center now, but it is great insurance while I take some heavy cuts. I cut a mortise about 1/4 inch deep at minimum size for an expansion hold. Since I do not want all that wood that is between the mortise and the outer edge, I take a taper cut from about 3/8 inch from the outside to the mortise. This effectively reduces the depth of the mortise to less than 1/8 inch. The extra plus is that there is still plenty of wood to hold the jaws and supported by the extra wood near the rim. In other words, if the mortise were this shallow and big enough to be near the perimeter, it would split out. Time to sand and apply finish to the bottom. I'm using mineral oil and beeswax mix. Last chance to easily apply finish. With the wood reversed into that mortise, I can get serious about the base exterior. However, I still keep the live center in place for insurance. This white oak is hard. I keep the profile simple. One problem is that the edge of the tree is in this piece and I do not have the full height. I have to trim it down. Now for the interior. I could remove the live center, but since I want to take some heavy cuts, I leave it still in place. Again with the box scraper, I start hollowing. This is similar to when I was cutting the mortise. The difference is the diameter and the depth. I continue this way until I am close enough to target depth and diameter, leaving some of each for more gentle cleanup. Measuring is key to funnel prevention. When nearly done, I waste away the center nub. Finally, I removed the live center, switched to a larger, freshly sharpened box scraper to more gently take finish cuts at the perimeter and depth. Since my lid will be a simple overlap, the rim is left plain. Time to sand and finish again. Now for the lid. Again, I press it against the closed chuck jaws. This option is more important for the lid because the wood is less than 1 inch thick. Just like the base, I cut a shallow mortise to fit my jaws. Now with the wood reversed and with extra security from my live center, a bored-out arbor stopper protects the surface from damage from the point. That would be okay if I planned on a knob, but this lid will not have a knob. I do not want any hole in the top middle. Now, different from the base, I'm cutting a shallow tenon. With the profile I planned for the top, I will be cutting away this wood also. I finish off the tenon with my skew for a great dovetail profile. With the wood reversed, my task is to mate the lid to the base. I plan on a simple joint with the lid overhanging the base. Therefore, all that I need is a mortise big enough to accept the base. I measure but start much smaller. Measure and test. Cut, measure and test until it fits. Just remember that any cut will produce twice that amount in the diameter. Fortunately, a cross-grain box is more forgiving than an end-grain box. With that completed, I take more cuts, mainly to reduce weight. The tricky part is to have enough wood for the top outer profile. At the last moment, I cut yet another shallow mortise with my skew. Again, sand and finish now, while I can. It is bad news to skip sanding and finishing now. Another reversal to mount into that shallow mortise I just cut. It is shallow, so I appreciate the padded live center. Now I want an OG curve. For guides, I divide the radius into approximate thirds and the thickness into halves, while allowing for the minimum lid thickness at the outermost perimeter. Then cut a cove from the inner third mark through to the next third mark next to the rim. Keep it approximate. There will be time to refine it later. With the cove ready, I cut a bead from the center to the half mark and blend the curves together. Finally, sand and finish. My beeswax and mineral oil mix is also a sanding media. As a benefit, when sanding is finished, all that is necessary is to buff it at high speed with a paper towel. With that, my simple cross-grain box is complete. The zebra wood top is interesting. The white oak base does not detract from or compete with the lid for visual interest. This is a fun project. Just remember the sequence of mortises, tenons, and remounts. Please give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe on my website because it's more reliable than YouTube notifications. Please tell your friends about my weekly videos. I appreciate your comments and questions. Please wear your full face shield whenever the lathe is running. That's my best safety tip. You are worth saving, and it can help.